Hi children, good morning. In last class you learned about digestive system. Where does the food goes and how does it get digested in human body and all you learned, right? And today's class we are going to learn one more important system which works in our body, right? So before knowing that, you recall one advertisement which frequently you'll see in the TVs. That is about smoking. The person who smokes, his lungs get effects, right? The smoker's lungs, they'll show in the TV advertisements that they'll show it as blackish color of lungs. What actually the lungs do in our body? Where these lungs are located and which system, which function they are performing in our body. You already might have learnt in your lower classes. The lungs are related to the respiratory system, right? So in today's class, you are going to learn about respiration in organisms. So what's our today's topic is? Respiration in organisms. What's the meaning of respiration? What's the meaning of respiration? Breathing air inside, inhaling air inside and exhaling the air outside. Is it known as respiration? No. It's known as breathing. That process where we are breathing. Breathing means inhalation of air and exhalation of carbon dioxide is known as breathing. So now we will see the difference between breathing and respiration. What's the meaning of breathing and what's the meaning of respiration? How these two words are different from each other we'll see now. Breathing is a mechanical process. It's a mechanical process, whereas respiration is chemical process. Here, the molecules are involved here. Here only the gases. You all know that the air consists of 21% of oxygen, right? So that air we are inhaling. And after going inside, what happens? Which organs are using this air? This all in detail you will learn in this chapter. So, and exhalation, inhalation and exhalation. Inhalation means taking air inside and exhalation means releasing the air outside through our nostrils. This process is known as breathing. And here, in the respiration, whatever the air you are taking inside, that helps to break down the glucose. The carbohydrate gets break down and release the energy. So finally, from the food, the energy is released. So this process is known as respiration. Breaking down of food with the help of oxygen and releasing energy known as respiration. So that is the difference between breathing and respiration. Then how many types of respirations are there? How does these lungs are helping in the respiration? That we will learn in this chapter. So the respirations are of two types. One is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. The other one is anaerobic respiration. Aerobic and anaerobic respiration. What's the meaning of aerobic respiration? The respiration which takes place in the presence of air. In the presence of oxygen. Where does the respiration takes place with the help of oxygen, that's known as aerobic respiration. Sometimes Without oxygen also the respiration takes place, that's known as anaerobic respiration. In the presence of oxygen, aerobic. In the absence of oxygen, the respiration which takes place is known as anaerobic respiration. Now we will see how the aerobic respiration takes place, what are the reactants, what are the materials are participating in the aerobic respiration, and what are the final products in the aerobic respiration we'll see now. So in the aerobic respiration, the food particles like the digested food, you learnt in your digestive system before class. Finally, the carbohydrates are converted into like small simple sugars. So glucose is one of the simple sugar. It gets converted into, in the presence of oxygen, this is the symbol of oxygen, molecule. So in the presence of oxygen, glucose is split into like carbon dioxide plus energy. Carbon dioxide plus energy are released when glucose is reacting with oxygen. So oxygen is breaking down the glucose and releasing the carbon dioxide and energy. That energy we are using to continue our life activities, various metabolic activities, and you all know that the carbon dioxide is exhaled outside, right? So that is happening in the aerobic respiration. Now when we come to the anaerobic respiration, here in the absence of oxygen, glucose gets converted. In the absence of absence of oxygen, it gets converted into like ethyl alcohol. It gets converted into ethyl alcohol, and CO2 is also released along with energy. What is released? What are the products in the anaerobic respiration? Along with CO2 and energy, either here ethyl alcohol or ethanol is produced in the anaerobic respiration. This you can observe by doing an activity, a simple activity you can do, and you can prove that whether the ethyl alcohol or ethanol is released in the anaerobic respiration or not, you can understand. To do this, you need one test tube, and half the test tube you fill with sugar solution and add some yeast cells. When our physical class starts, definitely we'll do this activity in our lab. So take a test tube, fill the test tube with half the sugar solution and add some yeast cells to that. In bakeries where sweets and cakes are prepared, in that bakery you can get some yeast cells and add to the sugar solution. Take a balloon and insert to this. Take a test tube like this and half the test tube fill with sugar solution. What you are taken? Sugar solution, and to this what you are adding? Yeast cells, and insert a balloon to this test tube and leave the test tube 4 to 5 hours, and then you can see after 5 hours you can see the inflated balloon. The balloon bulges out because the sugar in this sugar solution, the sugar gets break down with the help of yeast cells and it is released carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide, because of the carbon dioxide, the balloon bulged out, inflated the balloon is. By this bulged balloon, you can prove that the in absence of oxygen, glucose, simple sugar, the glucose got breakdown and released the CO2. Okay, and this process is only known as fermentation. This process we'll call it as fermentation. So through fermentation process, glucose got breakdown and released carbon dioxide and also ethanol or ethyl alcohol. How can we say that ethyl alcohol? How can we prove? Means little, if you open this balloon and smell it, it gives the smell of ethanol. Little alcoholic smell it will be. So through the smell you can prove that the ethanol is released by fermentation process. Understood, children? So anaerobic respiration is taking place in yeast cells. They are using that simple sugars, breaking down with the absence of oxygen and releasing ethanol and carbon dioxide. Both you proved by doing this experiment. A simple experiment. The smell proves that ethanol is released and balloon bulging out proves that carbon dioxide is also released in this process. And this process is known as fermentation. Okay. So up to this you understood about what's the meaning of breathing and what's the meaning of respiration. How many types of respirations takes place? You understood. Now we will see. You might have observed that when you run so fastly, you feel little pain in your legs. Or when you do more physical exercise, you feel your legs are little pain. You can feel that. This is what for we are getting pain actually. So in your muscle cells, when you are doing exercise, you need more amount of oxygen. Your body needs more amount of oxygen when you are doing physical exercises. Actually, normally what your respiratory system is supplying oxygen, that oxygen won't be sufficient to your muscles to produce the energy, required energy. When you are running or when you are doing the physical exercise, your body needs more amount of energy. That may not be supplied because of oxygen, lack of oxygen. Oxygen, whenever not sufficient oxygen is not there in the body, then your muscle cell starts doing respiration anaerobically. Without the help of oxygen, muscle cells will release lactic acid. Lactic acid is released plus energy is released. Muscle cells undergo respiration in the absence of oxygen and they are releasing lactic acid plus energy. Here actually carbon dioxide is not produced and you are feeling pain because of the accumulation of lactic acid. This lactic acid gets accumulated in the muscle cell and it leads to pain for you. And by the next day, the pains you will get little relief from the pain because of this lactic acid whenever reacting with oxygen, and again it will release the CO2 and energy. When you are doing the physical exercise, you need more amount of energy. So that is released whenever muscle cells are undergoing for anaerobic respiration. The required energy is released along with the lactic acid. Accumulation of lactic acid causes for pains in muscles and that get automatically reduced because whenever the lactic acid reacting with oxygen, again it produces the carbon dioxide and energy. So this is one of the anaerobic respiration takes place whenever you are doing physical exercises. So up to here, you learn the differences between the respiration. Now we will see where does the air goes and what are the different respiratory organs present in our body. We'll see now. will see that what's the meaning of breathing rate. What's the meaning of breathing rate? We will understand now. Breathing rate is nothing but one breath means one inhalation and one exhalation together known as one breath. So in a minute, per minute, how many times we breathe, that is calculated as breathing rate. So in a healthy person, per a minute, he can breathe 15 to 18 times. So this is known as breathing rate of a healthy person. But when he is doing any physical exercise, it increases up to 25 times more he breathes than the normal time. This increases the breathing rate. Not only breathing rate is increasing, that means at the same time by inhalation he is taking more amount of oxygen. That directly goes into the muscles where he need actually energy. There anaerobically without the help of oxygen get break down and release the energy. So in this way muscle cells, the number of lactic acid production is taking place in the muscle cells that we had seen in the anaerobic respiration just now. So breathing rate is per a minute how many times inhalation and exhalation taking place. And when it increases, physical exercises are running when the person is doing, it increases the breathing rate, and you can calculate by doing different activities. In your home, you calculate, you see your breathing rate by keeping your hand on your chest part because your lungs are situated in the chest part. Your lungs are situated in chest part and they are taking protection by the ribs. The ribs are giving protection to your lungs, and both the sides of lungs closes the lungs from both the sides. The ribs are closing the lungs and giving protection for them. And below this lungs, a diaphragm is present. This diaphragm is separating the chest and the abdominal cavity. Chest cavity and the abdominal cavity both are getting separated by the diaphragm, and it is also taking an important role in breathing process. This I will explain you how do we breathe, the process, the mechanism. When you are understanding, you will know the importance of diaphragm. Before knowing that, you should understand the respiratory organs. What actually organs are present in your respiratory system, then you can understand the mechanism of respiration. Now we will see what are the different parts present in the respiratory system. As we all discussed, the difference between breathing and respiration. First, in the breathing, we are inhaling oxygen, air we are inhaling, and exhaling the carbon dioxide. So, our nose is helping in this process. Through the nostrils, we are inhaling. As soon as you inhale the air, it enters into the nasal cavity. So, this is nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, it goes to the windpipe. It's also known as trachea. Above the trachea, larynx is there. Larynx is also known as voice box. Thus, larynx helps to produce the sound. That's why larynx is also known as voice box. So, from the nasal cavity, through the larynx, the air is entering into the trachea. So, whenever the trachea, the windpipe through your throat, it enters into your chest part. Whenever the trachea enters into the chest part, it is getting divided. Like V shape, it gets divided. From here, the trachea enters into the chest part As soon as entered into the chest part, it's getting divided into like V shape. So these two V-shaped parts are known as bronchi. Bronchi, whenever enters into the trachea, whenever it entered into the chest part, bronchi is redivided into bronchioles. This trachea, bronchi is redivided into bronchioles. These bronchioles, one side of the lungs, I am showing you bronchioles, and the other side of the lung, how it is taking protection from the ribs I showed you. 12 pairs of ribs are there from both the sides. They will join at one place and giving protection to the lungs because they are very important, delicate internal organ. So most of your internal organs are taking protection. They are in a protected place. Like when you see your brain, it is protected by the skull because they are so delicate and very important organs. In the same way, here your lungs are also getting protection by the ribs. And below, two floating ribs, floating bones will be. Below of that, diaphragm is present. So here, trachea, bronchus and bronchioles. Bronchioles are entering into the alveolar sac. Alveolar sacs. Alveolar sacs looks like a bunches of grapes. A grape bunch, when you see how it looks, this alveolar sacs looks like that. So this divided bronchioles are entering into the alveolar sacs, and from the alveolar sacs they goes to the alveole. This place is known as alveoli. Here actually gaseous exchange will take place. We are breathing air inside, so the fresh air or oxygen rich air will be utilized. And after the whole process, the mechanism, when you understand, you will understand this process, how actually the exchange of gases taking place. So near the alveoli, the gases exchange is taking place. They are taking oxygen inside and send to each and every part of the cell in our body. And at the same time, they are releasing carbon dioxide outside from the alveoli. So this is the mechanism of, these are the different respiratory organs of human body. To understand this, an easy way to understand, an activity is given in your NCERT textbook. When you do this activity, you will clearly understand what are the different parts present in our respiratory system. To do this activity, you need a plastic cup or a plastic glass you take and make a hole in the bottom of the glass and insert one straw and divide a small straw pieces you take and divide into V shape. Near each V shape, each straw, you insert two balloons, and down of this glass, keep one rubber band, tie one rubber band. See the structure making of this artificial lungs is given in NCERT textbook. So go through that and find out how your lungs are working in the body. When you pull this rubber band down, the volume of this glass will increase and more amount of air comes inside through the straw and these balloons inflate. And whenever you release this rubber band, the air goes out and the balloons comes into normal shape. When you do this activity, you will understand the clear picture of the mechanism of respiratory system. So tomorrow we'll discuss in our class how do we breathe, how our lungs are helping, from where to where the air moves, and how diaphragm is helping in this process we will understand. So in today's class, what you learned about the meaning of breathing and respiration. Both the words looks same, but there is a lot of difference between these two words. Now you are familiar with the meaning of breathing and the respiration. So write the differences between breathing and respiration, what you understood from the lesson in your own words. So write the differences between breathing and respiration, and also write the differences between aerobic respiration and the anaerobic respiration. So that is your today's home assignment, children. You are going to write the differences between breathing and respiration difference, and also write the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respirations. In anaerobic respiration, two examples I explained you. One in yeast cells, how the anaerobic respiration takes place, and how the anaerobic respiration takes place in the muscle cells. And what are the products when anaerobic respiration takes place in the muscle cells, and what are the products when anaerobic respiration takes place in yeast cells. Clearly you explain and write the differences. Okay children, in tomorrow's class, we'll understand more clearly about the mechanism of respiratory system. Thank you.